Let's make a quilt with Mama B. 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 Let's make a quilt with Mama B.
Hello quilters and welcome back. So glad that you joined me again, and today we're going to work on lesson 2. Now in lesson 1 you cut squares, 20 of them, out of a variety of fabrics and colors and blacks and whites. You then paired your squares so that you would have 10 pairs, and then you marked your squares with 3 lines, 2 cutting lines and 2 sewing lines and 1 cutting line. And then you sewed on those sewing lines, you cut on the cutting line, and you got 20 blocks. And these are the 20 blocks that you're going to make your quilt out of. One thing I did not mention when I was talking to you about marking your squares, I use just regular graphite pencils. I keep a pencil sharpener with me so that I can keep a sharp point on my pencils. Because as you use the pencil and the point goes away, it makes a wider line. And you want your lines to be as sharp and as narrow as possible. So I did want to share that little tip with you so that when you're using your pencils, you will remember that and keep them nice and sharp. Okay, today we're going to talk about layout. And as you can see, I have my layout. Now, what you're going to do is either on your floor or on a big enough table, put your 20 squares down, 20 blocks down. Look at how you want them arranged. Make sure you identify each row, as you see that I've identified my rows here. And then, if I were you, I'd take a photograph of it. You've got your phone there, take a photograph so that in moving it around, you can always put it back the way you had it originally, if that's the way you truly loved it. Once you've done that, then you want to pick the blocks up. And starting with the first one, you pick up row 1 first. You put this block on top of this block, on top of this block, on top of this block, so that you can get it to the sewing machine to sew it. And do that with each row. The first one is on top, second one is under that, third one under that, fourth one on the bottom. You're going to do that each time. Then once you start sewing them together, you have them in the order in which you need in order to sew them the way you want. Refer to your photograph. You got your phone there. Don't just let it sit there. Use it. You got the photograph on your phone. Look at it to determine how you want to put your blocks together. Then when you begin to sew, you've sewn these 4 blocks together. Then you have to press. And you're going to press your seam allowances for 1 row in 1 direction. And you're going to press the seam allowances for the next row in the other direction. And you will continue that process all the way down as you sew your rows. And the reason for that is so that seam allowances will fit snugly. Okay, now you can see that I have sewn row 1 to row 2, skipped, and then I sewed 3, 4, and 5 together. And the reason once again that I did it that way was so that I don't have to keep moving a lot of fabric through the machine at one time. Now I am ready to sew row 3 to row 4. And once again, look at the seam allowances.
Okay.
And we're going to put this together and I'll show you the finished quilt top. And once we finish this quilt top, your next lesson is going to be borders. So you need to start thinking about your borders, thinking if you even want to add a border, thinking if you do, how many borders, how wide you want the borders to be. All of those are design decisions that you must make before our next lesson, because I'm going to start talking to you about the fabric you need to get your borders done. Right now I'm sewing rows 3 and 2 together. And remember, all of the seam allowances between the rows have been pressed down. And I will do the same thing with this seam allowance. Okay, my quilt top is complete except for pressing this seam allowance. And the next thing that I need to do is be concerned about the borders. So, what you want to do this week is get your quilt top put together. Remember, you have 20 blocks. You want to lay those blocks out on a surface where you can see them, see what you want to do with them, arrange them any way you want. There is no right, there is no wrong way. It's the way you want it to be. And then you'll start sewing them together so that when we get together for lesson 3, your quilt top will be made and ready for borders. Happy sewing! Bye-bye!